Most advice online sounds good, but let's be real, it gets you nowhere. It's built for likes and not for results. If you're just starting out, it's hard to know what's real and what's just recycled guru nonsense. I'm Dylan, a co-founder of a company called WakeMate, a startup valued in the multi-millions, backed by real investors, partnered with world-class athletes. We're building a smart app and device for water sports that gives you instant feedback and data so you can actually improve. We're not just building another gadget, we're building something that completely revolutionizes water sports and changes the way that riders interact. We're building something that solves a real problem. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact way that we went from an idea to a funded product, the steps we took, all the mistakes we made, and what I would do if we had to start again from zero. If you're serious about building something, this video is going to give you a blueprint. No fluff, no hacks, just the real build. So where should you really start? You don't need the perfect pitch deck. What you need is a real problem that just won't leave you alone. We started WakeMate because one of our co-founders landed a trick. He looked around and he thought, how good was that trick actually? Had no data, no feedback, no clear way to improve. So we decided to ask around. Turns out it wasn't just us facing this problem. Every single rider we spoke to, regardless of the sport, was facing the exact same problem. They had no way to track their runs, no way to track progress, and no way to know if they were improving. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just a really niche. There was a massive gap in the water sports market. And once we saw it, we just couldn't unsee it. So if that's where you start, what should your first 30 days look like? Your first 30 days should not be about building. That's one of the biggest mistakes I constantly see. Your first 30 days should be just about listening. We talked to riders and ran surveys. We sent out thousands of cold DMs to everyone who we thought was our ICP. We did absolutely everything we could to hear from people how they would describe the problem in their own words. What did we find? We only had about 5 to 10% of people respond to us, which is probably expected when we're going out cold. No one said, hey, I want performance analytics. What they said to us is, I don't know how high I went. I don't know how fast I was going into that turn. I don't know what my airtime was. That's the language that we decided to build from. We didn't start with features. We started with an emotional attachment to the problem in a way that we could solve it. What does a smarter session actually feel like? What does progression look like if it's obvious? Once you understand the emotional side of the problem, the product and the features themselves start to write themselves. So once we had clarity, we started building the MVP. A very small team of 4 passionate co-founders with one goal: to track a clean single trick with data. It's important when you're building something to get it to market as quickly as possible. We wanted to get to market in a 3-day iteration cycle with an MVP. The reason that this is important is that we wanted to prove the concept of what we were doing. We did that in a number of ways. The first was getting to market as quickly as possible with a minimal viable product. We also built out a waitlist with proof of concept. So we were able to validate and analyze traction while solving the right problem for the right people at the right time. That is so important to know before you put heaps of money in. Second to that is building out an MVP. Before developing the software at a very expensive point, we decided to build a minimal viable product with a number of prototype firmwares and a prototype app that we could then bring out to the partnerships and affiliates that we'd built before getting to this point and bring to market with early access users from the waitlist. That allowed us to prove and validate what we were doing. Were we heading down the right path and solving the right problems? We didn't try to make it perfect, and we did make 3 notable mistakes. The first is we waited too long to make it public. I know this is ideology, especially around the way that Apple would launch products of not announcing them until the product is ready. We just don't have the audience or people who care enough about what we're doing to actually be able to do that. So I feel like we didn't get it out there as quickly as we could have, even with a 3-month prototype iteration cycle. Second to that, I think we greatly overthought the UI and UX and the user journey before we even got feedback. We're making way too many assumptions, and with things we need to adjust and adapt our 3-month MVP development iteration cycle. The third and probably the most important thing for us was we underestimated how hard it is from a messaging and positioning perspective to bring a firmware and software dual model to the market. It's so difficult to explain in simplistic terms. And once we'd done that, it was figuring out from a go-to-market and execution perspective, how can we best get this into hands as quickly as possible while building trust and clarity by giving them an opportunity to try it without purchasing first and building proof of concept and validation, which is really hard when you're building, even though it's relatively cheap, you're building some sort of firmware. It's so hard to get it into mass hands as quickly as possible when you have to send out the firmware itself. But once we had something live and solved those three problems, we had our MVP and we started solving those big mistakes that we were making. There was hundreds more. They were probably the three most significant ones. People started reacting not to an idea, but we were actually getting real feedback from some early prototype and access users. That was probably the most valuable data we'd gotten on our whole journey so far. So once we'd done that, we started to build out a little bit more traction and brand. I think most people wait to build brand until they have a product. In my opinion, that's completely backwards. Brand is what got us really early attention, even before we released that initial 3-month MVP. Brand got us funding and made writers care. We started telling the story as early as possible. We shared as many visuals as we could as early on around the concept. We prototyped as quickly as possible and partnered with real athletes who align with the mission. It takes a lot of work and time, but if you can reach out to 1,000 people and overcome and learn from the rejection, because there will be a lot of rejection, you will find those gems of people who want to work with you early on, who are aligned with their mission, or who are willing to give up their time, and you don't need to pay them. Even if you're giving them some sort of small equity stake, you can find the right people who can help you get this off the ground and get you in front of the right audience as quickly as possible. I think our product from a firmware and software perspective is awesome. We have an awesome team. We're solving a really real problem to so many people, but people bought into the idea and vision first before we even had any product. If you're not building trust during the development phase of the product, it's very easy to run out of steam. Then there's two main reasons that startups fail. The first is they run out of capital. And the second is they build something that no one actually wants. We built traction. We started to get partnerships. We got affiliates in the door and we actually validated the concept. If I was to look back and start again from day zero today, here's what I would do as like a bit of a 4-week plan. The first week, I would just talk to as many people as possible about the problem that you just can't get out of your head. Get in front of as many people as possible who you think are facing that problem. I'm not talking about family. I'm not talking about friends. Their feedback is going to be irrelevant, especially if they're not even one of the typical end user or someone who would assumptively face the problem you're trying to solve. Reach out on social media. You have such an easy way to connect digitally, right? Get on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, wherever your audience is living. Reach out to them, send emails, go and talk to people if you're able to in person. Just get in front of the people who are facing your problem. Week 2, turn the promise of the product or the ideation or problem you're trying to solve into a landing page or a waitlist. Push it to as many people as you can and validate. Are you solving the right problems? What's the feedback you're getting? What is the audience from a demographical perspective early on? What is your audience shaping to be? Figure out if you're solving the right problem. Are you solving it for the right people? And is it actually the right time? The third thing I'm going to do for that is get even more feedback. Make it as clear as possible and simplify the problem, simplify your solution, and really get it down into something you could explain to a 3-year-old. Get it as simple as possible and keep getting feedback from your waitlist users and people that you're reaching out to. That's your early adoption audience, that first 2.5% of your customer base. You can then start to convert and build trend. Even if it's just a small percent of those people, that's your early adopters that you can start to convert when you go live and launch. It's really going to be the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on what you're building or solving for. That's when I would start to prototype. Prototype the minimal version, even if it's tiny, even if it's something on a piece of paper, right? Prototype something and get it out there as quickly as possible. Ship it to those people who you got feedback from on the waitlist and that you was reaching out to for the survey, and then get their feedback, improve and repeat and tailor it to your audience until you get to the point of having a product that's both viable and solves the actual problem. That's when you can then start looking, going to mass and launching a product live. It's not glamorous, it's not fun, but a lot of the time, boring businesses and boring work reaps high rewards. The WakeMate is not finished yet. We're still building, testing, and learning. This is the exact blueprint we use to get started and to get valuated in the multi-millions post our latest seed funding round. If you're trying to start your own thing, I hope this gave you a clearer path. If you want more real time behind the scenes stuff from someone in that part of the journey right now, hit the subscribe button below. Drop a comment and let me know what you want me to unpack next. There's no guru talk, no BS. It's just to build and the real raw lessons. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.